every now and then you get a chance to chop it up with a guy named Randy who used to play poker and now makes cabinets.
There we go. Rare individual.
There you go. So when you played poker, what was your game of choice?
Early it was Hold'em because that was all the rage back then, right? I kind of came in during the big boom. And I remember when we were first playing on my friend's kitchen table, $20 sit and go tournaments. I remember seeing Chris Moneymaker on TV. Like in the background, we'd have Chris Moneymaker in the World Series. So that gives people an idea of the time frame. And for years,
2006, right? 2007, somewhere in there?
yeah, somewhere, no, it'd be earlier than that. It'd probably be oh 01, oh 02, oh 03. I'd have to fact check that for sure, but it was earlier than that. Um, like oh 05, oh 06 was probably my peak or my prime or where I was playing the biggest stakes, playing the best. And I started out there playing $20 single tables on my friend's kitchen table, and I found out I won all the time. And then I decided, well, if I'm going to do this, I should probably buy some books. I got a little better. And then I just kept playing bigger and bigger and bigger till at some point I was pretty much living in Vegas at Caesar's Palace and eventually got a house in Vegas and went from there. But in more recent years, and I don't play much anymore, but now I play Omaha more, is it's more gambling, more complex math, more complex strategy.
It's
And it's
definitely
just,
more gambling because I call it pot luck Omaha, and you
yeah,
just cannot get people to fold like you can in Hold'em.
yeah.
And it's yeah, Omaha is one of those games that I literally despise.
Okay.
Probably because when I've played it, people call me to the river, and by some miracle they get the card they absolutely need, and they always win. And I
There's a
basically
lot.
want to punch them in the head because they didn't fold when they were supposed to.
Yeah, there's a lot more of that, and there's a lot more just backdoor,
Oh God.
runners, and maybe
Oh,
somebody's drawing for one thing and they hit something else by accident. The four cards changes the game a lot.
it's yeah, literally, yeah, it's more of a game of lottery than skill.
Yeah. Although I will tell you, one of the things I appreciated it, I am very good at math and doing so when I started playing poker, the first time I played, I just remember figuring out the odds like a flush, right? Like I say I had two diamonds in my hand, there were two on the board. I was like, okay, there's 52 cards. That means there's four suits, there's 13 diamonds. That means there's nine left, and there's this many. And I just did the odds in my head and I figured out, I had a little better than a 1 in 3 chance to hit it. And with Hold'em, people don't actually have to be able to do the math. You can pretty well memorize the math. Here's the chances you hit a straight. Here's the chances you hit a flush. And everybody kind of knows the odds. And what I find in Omaha is people can't just memorize the math. It's too complex and there's too many backdoor ways and they don't even really try. And therefore, you get a lot more gambling. You get a lot more people putting money in bad,
No
and there's a
gamble,
lot
no
more
future.
opportunity. What's that?
No gamble, no future.
Yeah. So I hardly ever play. I probably haven't touched a deck of cards in probably twice in the last 3 years. I'm too busy between running a business, writing a book, hosting a podcast, doing all that stuff myself. It's one of those things that just got put to the side.
I don't blame you. I just went to the World Series final table to root on my friend Michael Mizrachi, and the game has changed a lot.
Yeah.
Michael played a little old school though. I liked it. He got it in and let the cards play for themselves.
Yeah. I haven't seen him. I mean, I've been out of the scene really since I started the cabinet business, since like oh 08, oh 09, I guess oh 09, since I really, and it's not like I haven't been to Vegas and played, but traveling and following the tour and, staying there. But, I think when he was player of the year one year, I played with him a lot that year. I think in LA, somehow we were at the same table like six or
Michael
eight
plays a
times in
lot,
LA over a
period.
month.
Not as much as he used to, but like I'm not kidding you. That guy puts in hours. He loves
Right.
the game.
Yeah. Hence the nickname the grinder. I mean, that's where it came
Hence,
from.
he does grind. I mean, I sat there once in Bobby's room, played for about 7 hours, came back the next day in the afternoon, just to give you an idea, like 17 hours later, he
Yeah.
was still playing the same 10-20 game upstairs.
Yeah.
I was like, dude, are you kidding me?
Yeah. Well, I've been there. I remember the first time I went to Vegas, I was still playing like 1-2 no limit hold'em, as a fair and I'd basically played all night here in Austin the night before we left, got on a plane, slept for a couple hours on the plane, Went there, went straight to the card room and played for 30 hours straight, and then went and slept for 2, 3 hours, went back to the card, and I just did that for the 4 or 5 days I was there. I don't know that I slept 10 hours in 5 days. And eventually I got a little better balance. But in the early days, like being in Vegas, it was like I didn't want to miss a hand. I didn't want to miss a second.
Yeah, it's kind of funny. I lost my left eye about 8 years ago, so I get headaches if I play too many hours. And I actually play better now because I only sit and play for like maybe 3, 4, max 5 hours.
Yeah.
And I actually play way better because I'm leaving the game and I'm coming back fresh.
Yeah.
There's something to be said about playing poker on a good night's sleep. And
Absolutely.
people make mistakes all the time. Like, I'm not kidding you. I once played a guy and we got it all in. We were playing 10-20. It was a big hand. And he literally swore he had pocket queens and he thought he had quads. Now he had a set because there were two queens on the board, but I had ace queen. He had king queen, but he thought he had pocket queens. So when I threw over the ace queen on the river, he's like, "Call the floor. The hand is bad. The deck is bad." I'm like, "What are you talking about?" He's like, "Either the deck is bad or you're cheating because I got two queens and there's no way you could have a queen." And the
Yeah.
floor came over, and he was weird about showing his cards. Funny thing is, he embarrassed himself. He could have just looked at his cards, but he had no sleep for like so long
Yeah.
such a long time. He thought the king of spades and the queen of spades, which is weird too, because he had two spades in his hand. He couldn't have two queens, and he lost a big hand there. And he literally came up to me afterwards. He's like, "Buddy, can we work out something?" He goes, "I haven't slept. I've been, I've got the shakes, blah, blah, blah." He's like, "I read my hand wrong. There's no way I would have gotten it all in like that, blah, blah, blah." I'm like, "Buddy, you had three queens. I mean, of course you get it all in. You had a king kicker. I mean, I can't give you a rebate on that. You should go get some sleep."
Right.
So
No,
funny thing
I've
is,
been,
he kept playing. Like he was stuck and he kept playing. But there's something to be said about taking care of your body and your mind
yeah.
before you go play high stakes poker or any stakes poker.
I've been on both sides of that. I couldn't even guess how many hours playing 10-20 no limit at the Bellagio back in the day. And there were nights where I'd sit there and I would just grind and I would be up and down and I'd be up a few thousand and down a few thousand. And somewhere at 6, 7, 8 o'clock in the morning, people would make mistakes, they'd get sloppy, and I would make money. And I did that for years. But, to your point, one year at the World Series when I'd been there 6 weeks straight playing long hours every day. It was right after, like a day after I'd busted out of the main event. I was playing a game at the Palms back when the Palms was still kind of rough.
Wow.
And I think I only played at the Palms a couple times, but this was a pretty big game. And this guy, I called this guy. I mean, I had kings, but it was this ugly, ugly board. And I remember I made a big call on the flop. I made a call on the turn, and I called like 5,000 or $5,500 all in or something on the river. And I tanked because I think there were like all I had was a pair, and it was just the ugliest board. There was a flush on board, there was a straight on board, and I finally just read that this guy was bluffing, and I called, and he said, "You call?" And I waited to see his hand because I wasn't very strong. And I remember he stands up really like confidently and he throws the cards down. And it was clear, like he was in the 2 seat and I was in the 8 seat, so it's clear across the table. And it was dark in there. That poker room was real dark, and I just thought he had a flush. And I threw my cards in the muck,
Oh, that's the worst. I did
and I
that once myself.
and he's like, "What?" And he had like queen high or something, right? He had no pair, no nothing. And the guy next to me is like, "What did you call him with that you couldn't beat queen high?" I'm like, he had a flush, and everybody's like, "No, he didn't." And I remember I that second, I took all the what chips I had left. I cashed out. I went back to the house I was renting at the time, and I booked. This is before I was really living out there, and I booked a flight home for like first flight out the next morning. I was like, all right, time to go home. Like
Yeah.
lesson learned.
Yeah, that's a sign. I'll give you a funny story. I was in Chicago at God, I can't remember the name of the casino. It's probably the only one back there. I want to say it was the Horseshoe. And we were playing a big game. And there was, I mean, people were begging to get at this one table. And finally I got on the table and it was a big game. There was one guy with like 50 grand, another guy with 100 grand, like big money everywhere all over the table. And this guy, um, I had queens. He had kings. He was sitting next to me right by the dealer. And so all of a sudden, people started getting it in. One guy was short stacked. He went all in for like 3,800. Another guy called him for 5,800. And then another guy called him for 5,800, but those had big stacks. And I had like 13 grand and I had queens. And I'm like, well, I'm not just calling. So I shoved. He shoved. He had 100+ grand, like just a big arrow of chips, like organized nicely and everything. Funny thing is, he didn't use a card protector. So he literally went like this with his two cards. He put them at the tip of the arrow of his chips, and then he went like this. And then the dealer thought he was mucking, so he went like this,
Wow.
put them at the tip, and the dealer went like this super quick, and nobody saw it. And he literally pushed a stack of chips into the middle and said, "I'm all in." And then all of a sudden, I saw that. I literally saw the dealer muck his cards. And then everyone else like didn't see it. And then all in, all in. So like six all ins. I'm already all in. And I look and I'm thinking to myself, this fucker doesn't have cards. I'm like, and I didn't say anything because I'm like, for sure he must realize he doesn't have cards. And so all of a sudden, Queen hit. I won the pot. Funny thing is, the King hit also. It was like a straight draw on the board, but the straight never hit. Blah blah blah. It was like King, Queen, 9, 8. It was crazy. It was like all over, and everyone had like outs on the river. My trips won, and but he thought he had trip kings, and so literally, the dealer's like mucks the board, starts pushing the chips towards me, and he's like, "What are you talking about?" He goes, "I had kings." He was like, "You didn't have any cards. I mucked your cards." And so the floor came over, blah, blah, blah. Went to the video. They're like, blah, blah, blah. It took like 4 hours to get a result. And finally, they said, listen, it's your job to protect your cards at all times.
Yeah.
And they gave me the pot. Funny thing is, he did the same thing. He's like, listen, I swear to you, I had kings. I swear to you, I had kings. I'm like, buddy, I actually believe you had kings, but you did not protect your cards. That's the other thing, too. Like, I bring heavy card protection. That was the lesson of a lifetime. I make sure there's a brick on top of my cards. I'm never going to let that happen.
Yeah. I don't like sitting next to the dealer for that reason, if at all possible.
Yeah, trust me. And some dealers are wacky. Like their hands are so quick. Like they muck cards. Like it's almost like they're ninja. And
Yeah.
the weird thing
Well,
is, I knew for a weird second that he didn't realize. I knew that he didn't realize he didn't have cards. And it was so weird because I thought to myself, the dealer should say something because the guy's all in and the dealer mucked his cards. And I'm thinking to myself, and then I even asked the dealer, I'm like, how come you didn't say anything? He's like, I thought he went all in without the cards. I go, who the fuck goes all in without cards? What are you wrong with you? So
too
yeah,
many dealers, some of them are just on autopilot. You can't blame them in a way. They're bored, you know?
oh yeah, it was late. It was
Yeah.
dark. It was one of those gambling boats that
Yeah.
the river boats.
Yeah.
And those things get so crowded and there were so many people standing around the table because we were the big game. And yeah, it was like there was a lot of pressure. Plus the floor, it was kind of like the floor was horrible because when the commotion started after the pot was over, Floor had to like weed through all these people, and everyone's giving the floor their opinion, and Floor can't even make a decision.
Yeah.
And the guy's literally next to me screaming, "Don't touch those chips!" And I'm like already stacking up the pot chips.
Yeah.
He's like, "Keep them away from your stack. We're gonna fix this." And I'm like, "I don't think so, buddy." I'm like,
Yeah.
pretty sure those are all mine.
Yeah.
And it's funny too because poker teaches you stuff about life. What are three lessons that poker's taught you about business and life?
Boy, there's a lot of them, but I think one of the biggest things is discipline and like and it might be discipline like emotional discipline, right? Not going on tilt. Again, similar we were talking about people blowing all their money and somebody might play great. And I used to see this in tournaments, like a WSOP tournament. I can't tell you how many times I'd see the old really tight guy, really conservative, and he would play super conservative and then sometimes it was 6, 8, 10, 12 hours in, they would just lose it. They couldn't focus that long, and they would lose all their chips in one hand. Right. So it was some of that's endurance, but it's discipline. It's if you do get a bad beat, which inevitably happens in poker, do how do you respond to that? Do you fight back or go from there? Some of it's assessing risk and odds, I think about a lot of things now in percentages. I tend to talk very black and white because once similar to poker, when I'm thinking about the EV and I think, okay, this makes sense mathematically to make this call or make this bet, you just go with it, right? You don't half make the bet. You either all make the bet or none of the bet. So I tend to do things very definitively, but a lot of times, even with business, I think, okay, there's a 10% chance this happens. There's a 30% chance this happens. There's another 30, and then what are the odds of all of these different outcomes? And I think, and maybe that's the biggest one because I think in life there's a lot more randomness and chance than we give it credit for. We just think whatever happened was 100% going to happen. But, there's just sometimes if something in the market or, imagine you were, I was starting a business back then and I was actually putting on basketball tournaments at the time, like 3-on-3 basketball tournaments. And I had this big
You were the
idea.
big three before the big three.
Yeah. And 9/11 hit like a few days before my entry deadline when all the entries come in. Like I'd already had some entries and I just got nothing. Usually everybody I'd talked to, like 95% of the entries come in the last day or two. And I got none of those because 9/11 hit and nobody signed up, right? Like, who knows? Maybe I would still be doing basketball tournaments 25 years later if, if that doesn't happen, right? I mean, who knows? Maybe it would. There's no way that I can actually know, right? And I mean, Nasib, how do you say it? Talib, or however you say his name, wrote Black Swan, talking about Black Swan. That's certainly a Black Swan event. But I
Yep.
don't think as humans, our brains don't our brains don't process that information very well, right? Like, what's the chances of all of these things? And especially after the fact, I think we just look at it as this is 100% what happened. So that's a few of them, bankroll management, risk assessment, reading people. I mean, you said three, that's a lot more than three, but, certainly being able to read somebody and know, and even picking off a bluff. I was really good at reading somebody, watching were they pursing their lips, were they blinking, where were they looking, were their legs bouncing up and down, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Um, but probably a bigger skill is, does the story they're telling make sense, right? Like, does their bet make sense for how this hand played out and what could it be? Bless you.
Thank you.
And so I think that's a life skill,
Wait,
you
could you read that? Was that a real sneeze? No, just kidding.
know.
The one thing that poker taught me in life, and this is something that I almost think everyone should play poker with if you're ever going to be in business, is when you're up against like a big bet and it's for all your chips and you're having a rough day and you really don't want to lose all your chips and be done for the day and you're really under a lot of stress and pressure, but you gotta keep your mind right and literally make the right decision. Whether you win or lose, you got to make the right decision. You can't let your emotions play into it. To me, that's the greatest thing an entrepreneur can get trained on, because when you're in business, sometimes, it's Thursday, you got payroll on Friday, you need to make 10 grand, you got to find 10 grand in somehow, and you're literally under pressure, but the people around you can't see that pressure. You've got to literally be calm, cool, and fucking collected.
Yeah, it's true.
Yeah, that's the one thing that poker taught me is when you're up against it and somebody puts you in for all your chips, you got to learn how to control stress and pressure
Yeah,
and literally make the right decision.
yeah. Well, another thing that just came to mind is play games you can win, play games you're good at. I was kind of a jack of all trades where I could play Hold'em, I could play Omaha, I could win at cash games, I could win at tournaments, I could win at single table tournaments. Like I was positive EV on all of those. And but there's people that made a lot more money than me, probably that were just good at one of them, right? Like I remember playing with people that were amazing tournament players, but you'd get them in a cash game and they were just total fish, and vice versa. Lots of cash game players couldn't adapt to tournaments.
It's funny, Doyle Brunson, when I first moved to Vegas, it was 2012, and I went to the Bellagio, and he was in his little scooter. He had bad hips at the time, and he was coming out of Bobby's room, and like all these players like came around and, hey, can I get a picture? Can I get this? Blah 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 blah. And I could tell just by the look on his face, he was like, "Listen, get the fuck away from me. I'll be total cordial later, but I got to go to the bathroom."
Yeah.
And like, I don't think people understood like this guy. He's on a scooter. He's got to get through. And they're like young kids and stuff. And I remember the first thing I ever did when I got to Vegas is I literally walked through and I acted like I was part of the security team at the Bellagio. And I said, "Out of the way, get the fuck out of the way, get the fuck out of the way. Come here, Mr. Brunson." And I walked him right to the bathroom. He's like, how'd you know I had to go to the bathroom? I go, because your face was turning yellow from piss. And I remember that was the first thing I ever said to Doyle Brunson. He laughed his ass off. And he went inside the bathroom at the Bellagio. Now the bathroom was over here, and way on this side was this place called Snacks, where you can get a bite to eat.
Yeah. I
Now,
used to eat
so
there. I've eaten a lot of meals there.
yeah, so I was waiting for a table to open up, and I'm sitting at Snacks, but I'm sitting like by they had like a rail where people could see your head. And Doyle, like 20 minutes later, 30 minutes later, comes scooting over. Before he goes on the Bellagio, he goes and he comes over to me at Snacks, and he sits down, and we sat and talked for an hour.
Wow.
And I remember like he just talked to me for an hour. First thing he said to me is like, "What's your name?" I didn't get your name. And we shook hands, and he goes, "My name's Doyle." And I said, "Trust me, I know exactly who you are." And he goes, "You're pretty funny." I said, "No, trust me. I knew I could tell right away you needed to get to the bathroom, and those kids had no fucking courtesy in them whatsoever. So I figured, what the hell, I might as well fuck around a little bit and scare them the fuck out of the way." And we sat and talked for an hour. I ate a little bit of food, and then afterwards, he said, "I'm going to get you a book that I wrote." And I said, "I know the book." And he goes, "I'm going to get you an autographed copy." And I said, "I appreciate that." He goes, "But I don't have it with me now." And I said, "Trust me, you got a ton of shit in that little scooter. I can't imagine a big Bible being one of the things." And I hadn't seen him for like, I don't want to say, like 2, 3 months afterwards. I mean, I've seen him, but I didn't ask him for the book and didn't really care to. The guy's busy and he's usually playing in Bobby's room, high stakes poker, just with some tourists or businessmen that wanted to sit with Doyle Brunson, which is hilarious because one of the things he told me is like, "Chris, I don't play poker anymore now to gamble. I just do it to make money." He goes, "I get paid appearance fees." I go, "What?" He goes, "Yeah, when I go into Bobby's room, I get paid $100,000 appearance fee." I go, "Are you serious?" He goes, "No, no, no. I call it an appearance fee when some businessman makes a horrible play and I just take advantage of it." He goes, "I probably play maybe 3 or 4 hands and walk out of there with 100,000 every time." He goes, "But I call that an appearance fee because at my age and in my years of experience, I don't need to play poker and gamble. I don't have to gamble for a flush draw or some sort of hand that I think is going to come on the river." And it was great because I got a chance to know him and I got a chance to listen to that. I started realizing you got to sit at the tables in life where you are able to benefit more than the people around you are able to benefit from you. And that's one thing that I've done is I've hosted over 300 private dinners, breakfasts, and lunches where I've invited people that are coming into like conferences and stuff. I invite all the speakers and I say, "Hey, listen, I'll feed you a fucking steak," just to put them in a room and literally get a chance to have a meal with them. Because when you eat with somebody, they put their phone away, they have genuine conversations. And I've made some of the greatest connections of my life sitting
Mm.
over a meal with somebody. And the funny thing is, people always ask me, "Oh my God, how do you get all these great connections?" And I tell them, I said, if you want a great connection, you want to find somebody that you really want to connect with that has value, that they can give you value in your life, buy them a dinner. Say, "Listen, I will take you out to the dinner of your lifetime." That dinner might cost you 500, $600, whatever. At the end of the day, I promise you, you will have their undivided attention for at least an hour. Nobody eats like a pig when they're with you, and when they're sitting there and eating. By the way, on some really like high value people, I paid the wait staff to fucking slow walk the food. Like I didn't want them to have their entree for like an hour and a half sometimes. So,
Yeah.
there's some tricks of the trade there. But the best value that I got out of sitting down with Doyle that day at Snacks was sit at the tables where you can get the most value and benefit. And
Yeah.
that's one thing that you just touched upon is you got to pick your battles. You got to pick the tables that you want to sit at. You don't sit at a table with a bunch of card sharks. You'll get eaten up alive. Those guys are professionals. But you sit at a table where you're able to benefit mostly from the people sitting at it, and your life will benefit from it. You will level up.
Yeah, what you were talking about the dinner thing. That's really smart. I've never really heard that before. So that's a great tidbit I'm going to take away from this. The sitting at tables. I think now in retrospect, right? Like I played at the Bellagio the 10-20 game that was a hard game back then, right? This is in the mid
Oh
2000s.
yeah, you probably had, some of the pros sitting at that 1020 on the table. The pros would come and sit at the 1020 just because they could literally outplay everybody at the 1020.
So it was, I mean, but and I beat that game consistently over years, but not as much as some other people. And I played that game. Well, I think back now and I think, boy, I was stupid. Because when I would go to LA for the LA Poker Classic, I would play the tournament and then I'd go down and play their 1020 and I would demolish their 1020. Like I would beat it.
I don't know. I got to tell you, that LA Poker Classic beat me up roughly. And for whatever reason, some of the best players, best Asian players in all of the world show up at that event. And I sat a couple of times and I got chopped up like crazy. Those guys are hardcore gamblers.
So one of my friends who was really an elite player used to just beat the crap out of that 1020 game at the Bellagio. And he had this aggressive, the way he played, it was, the difference is even though it was a 1020 game, it'd be $140 to open. And then there'd be a continue, and you would usually make it 140. You'd take the blinds, play the next hand. Make it 140, take the blinds, play the next. Every once in a while, somebody would call continuation bet. Not very many hands got past the flop, to be honest, right? And it was just a game of like bet, big bet, continuation bet, take the pot, steal the blinds, do that. And he would make thousands of dollars a day just doing that. And then inevitably, I feel like some old guy that was sick of being bullied by this, he was quite a bit younger than me. This young kid would fight back and they just picked the wrong time to fight back. And he, in that game, I beat it, but I wasn't as good. In LA, it was $60 to see a flop, right? And instead of having zero people see the flop or two, and three was a big crazy flop at the Bellagio. At the Commerce, you'd have four, five, six, seven people seeing a flop for $60. And also at the Bellagio, people had way bigger stacks. Lots of people at the Commerce would buy in for $1,000. Well, if six people see the flop for $60 and it's 360, they call a continuation bet on the flop. They just put the rest of their chips in.
Yeah.
And I thrived on playing post flop and making the tough decisions and reading people and figuring out where I was at. And I liked, in an ideal world, I could play hands there that I couldn't play at the Bellagio. And so that game just fit my strengths better. And I made so much more money in that game, but
All right.
I didn't
Here,
figure it out at the time. It
here's a
was years
couple
later.
of quick questions. What's your favorite hand to play pre-flop?
Oh, my hand was the lady on the nine, queen nine, and I don't. It was just a
Whoa.
it was a hand when I first started to
Suited
play.
or unsuited? It's got to be suited.
Don't care.
Didn't
I
care?
don't care. I would just win with it. And when we'd play in these home games in Austin, and then it became like this. If there was a board with two queens, two nines, or that queen nine made a straight, everybody that knew me was like, "Lady in the Randy's got lady in the nine." Like it was like so it there was a little, and it gave me, even though at the time I developed a lot more range in my hands, but at the time I played really tight, really conservative, like straight poker. That was like my one thing that was a little bit of advertising. They were like, "Well, he could have queen, he maybe doesn't have aces. He could have queen nine, right?" So that would be my hand.
My favorite hand of all time that I've won countless amounts of money from is pocket eights. I call it meatballs.
Yeah.
And I remember one time this girl from New York was in at the Wynn Hotel, and we were playing at the Wynn. And I'd sat there 2, 3 hours now with her, and she wouldn't shut up. Like she literally had the most energy mouth of any New Yorker I've ever seen in my life. And she was sitting over here, and she just would talk all the time, like pre-flop, flop. She just talk, 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 talk. And I don't like to talk at all during a hand. And when the flop, me and her went heads up, and I had pocket eights, meatballs, and the dealer was a good friend of mine. And the flop comes 6, 7, 8, and out of nowhere, I don't say anything. And out of nowhere, she's talking, 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 and the dealer just all of a sudden whispers, "Meatballs." I start laughing. He knows I like that hand, and I just happen to have it at that time. So the turn comes another eight, and I said, and she's Italian too. She's Italian from New York, and she won't shut up. And she flopped the straight, by the way, just 9, 10, and so I got quads, and the river was a nothing card, and the dealer and I are just laughing. And she all of a sudden goes, "What's so funny? What's so funny? You got something to laugh about?" I said, "Hey, it's all meatables." And I laughed like that. And she goes, "Oh, you're making fun of my accent?" Because she was Italian. And she goes, "I'm all in." I said, "No, I'm not making fun of your accent. I got a meatballs, lots of meatballs." And I guess like in New York, they don't call Pocket Eight meatballs. They call it snowmen. And she's
Yeah.
like, "That's not meatballs. Those are snowmen." I'm like, "These are meatballs." And so I won the whole pot, and she lost her mind, called the floor over, said I was making a racial gesture at her about meatballs, and I was like, "No, I didn't." Everyone here knows I call these meatballs, and she's like, "No, no, he's making fun of me because I'm Italian and from New York. He's making fun of me," and I'm like, "No, it's literally just the cards, baby."
Yeah.
I will say that's my favorite hand of all time.
Yeah.
All right, so let's talk a little bit about where you're at today. You're in the cabinet business. First of
Yeah.
all, there's a big difference. I just built a house and I'm about to build another one. And there is a big difference between cabinets and good cabinets. Talk a little bit about your cabinet business.
So weird transition, right? From poker to cabinets. And at some point, I just wanted to be a contributing member of society again. I remember, just wanting to give something back. And I had zero interest in the cabinet business. But when I had first started playing poker, I'd just get job offers. Every time I turned around, somebody, they knew I was available and they would offer me a job or they would be talking to me about a business. Well, after 8 years of playing poker, if you can imagine, you say no enough times, the job offers had pretty much dried up. I got a call from a friend of mine, and he told me about this cabinet business. I was like, I don't know anything about cabinets. You know, nothing. But I flew up to Cleveland to this manufacturer, looked at these guys, and I did a bunch of research, and I thought I can sell this. And really, my plan was, Chris, I mean, literally, I thought I'm just going to do this for a year or two while I figure out what to do with the rest of my life. And then I thought I would sell the business or find somebody to run it. Well, I started selling, I got into it, and I found out I liked it. I liked helping people put quality product and we could offer it at a good price. I mean, our whole thing is value, right? All wood, soft close, dovetail, all that, blah, blah, blah. But it was offering at value and sitting down with somebody and saying, what do you want here? And what do you want here? And putting their kitchen, like, if you would have asked me, I would have told you the last thing in the world I was a designer because I thought matching colors and all that. But it was really a lot of math, geometry, asking questions, listening to people, figuring it out. And I was good at it. And I figured it out. And then from there, I told my business partner, who's now my business partner, but he's my friend in Tulsa, Gary, about it. I told another friend in LA. Gary told his cousin in Oklahoma City. The friend in LA told his friend in St. Louis and his friend in Chicago. And pretty soon we had like a little buying group. And and then eventually we figured out because of our buying power, there was a middle or there was a spread to be made. And it turned into a company that now has 35 locations across the country.
Yes, you're
Um,
right there, abundance. Is that it?
what's that?
Is that the
Oh,
name?
I didn't even see the background. Yeah, that's a podcast that I host called Tales of Abundance. The cabinet company is called Premium Cabinets.
That's a great name.
Yeah.
Yeah, I tell people all the time, you buy good cabinets. That's like you spend more money, but you get real good cabinets.
Yeah.
And I got to tell you, just same thing like you go to like Pennsylvania and you buy furniture from the Amish. I'm
Yeah.
not kidding you. Those guys are geniuses when it comes to working with wood.
Right. Yeah.
And there's a huge difference between good cabinets and cabinets.
Yeah. And we don't make them, but we work with we've got relationships with 25 plus manufacturers that we work directly with the manufacturer. In a lot of cases, we're their biggest customer. Sometimes we're their second or third biggest customer, but a lot of cases we're
Do you
their
have
biggest
anyone here in
customer.
Vegas?
What's that?
Do you have anyone here in Vegas?
We do not. Closest guy would be in Phoenix,
I'm
but
going to
we
introduce
ship.
you to a guy that has a CNC router and it makes cabinets here in Vegas.
Yeah.
I think his name's Adam. I think you guys would benefit from knowing each other.
Okay. I'd love to talk to him. But we ship all over the country and I've looked at literally hundreds and hundreds. I mean, I'm literally, it could be 1,000 different manufacturers we've talked to, and we've picked the 25 we work with because they meet the quality standards, the service standards, the right pricing. so that we can still offer good value to our customers.
You guys also deal with the countertops too, like granite and
We
quartz and all that stuff.
we do not. We have tried, we've learned, we did a bunch of stuff with concrete for a while, but what we've learned is we are
Concrete.
really,
People
really
talk to me
good.
about doing concrete on top of a cabinet, and it
Yeah.
just seems weird. It just seems like it would like flake away over time.
It's really durable, especially they have new concretes now. Different, you're thinking like goes in your driveway or on your
Yeah.
foundation. There's newer, stronger, more durable, lighter,
Seems like it
flexible
would be
even.
heavy as sin too.
And they're lighter than quartz or granite. Actually, the new
Wow.
the new concretes they're stronger, more that. It's not for everybody. It's still a minority of the thing, but it was beautiful. You could make it look like granite and a lot of other stuff. But we just found we were really good at selling cabinets. And what I learned was I didn't want to be all things to all people, that there was a lot better business, more enjoyable, more profitable, easier to scale and replicate, and figuring out what you're really good at and focusing on that. And I'd rather be really good at one thing than mediocre at two, three, or even six things.
I agree. I think that's awesome. Listen, I've loved chopping it up with you about poker and talking a little bit about cabinets. But one of the things I always ask people to do is if you're talking to somebody right now and they're a little bit of afraid of chasing their dreams, being an entrepreneur, what would you tell them right now? What would you tell them to inspire them to chase their dreams?
Man, this is just cliche, but just do it, right? And I think,
Bo
you know,
knows.
what's that?
Bo knows.
Yeah. You know, people on their deathbed, when they do studies or they talk to people on their deathbed, you never find people that regret the things they did. They always regret. Now, they regret they didn't spend enough time with family, or they didn't do this, or they worked too hard, or they didn't take enough vacations. But they really regret the opportunities and the chances they didn't take, the shots they didn't take, right? So I think it's jump in. That being said, if it's running a business, I used to think everybody should run a business because that's the way I was wired. Now I think if it's running a business, I always tell people only run a business if you have to. Like I have to be self-employed because working for people is just, I like being an entrepreneur. I like having everything on my shoulders and
I mean,
figuring
it does
things
have
out.
its days where it sucks, though, by the way.
What's that?
I've been an entrepreneur all my life, and I will say it does have its days where it sucks.
Oh, 100%. And that's why most people shouldn't do it, right?
Oh my God. There's a book out there called The E-Myth by
Yes.
Michael Gerber. And
Yep.
it
Good book.
talks about why being an entrepreneur is not for everybody.
Right.
And I know so many people that tell me they're going to start a business. And I sit them down, I say, listen, read this book first because it may not be for you. And partly because I don't think people have the temperament to be an entrepreneur. They
Yeah.
don't understand that it's going to be scary, it's going to be high risk. You're going to have to learn how to lead in the middle of a thunderstorm and a tornado. You're going to have to literally do things that are uncomfortable every single day. You're going to have challenges every single day. And I don't think people have the emotional temperament to be an entrepreneur.
No, it's like there's times where you have to make payroll and you can't pay yourself. You've got to pay everybody else and you don't have the money and you've got to take it out of savings or you have to get a loan or you have to put it on credit card. Like you have to find a way to make payroll,
Shout
right?
out to Fred Smith, who took his payroll money and went to the blackjack table. You know Fred Smith from Federal Express, right?
Yeah,
You know that story?
I do not.
So he's starting off this airline, the delivery service, and he's on a Thursday night. He's got 5 grand in the bank, and he's got to make payroll, and he needs 20 grand to make payroll the next day. And he doesn't even know how he's going to put fuel in the jets after that. So he literally takes all the money out of the bank that Thursday, takes one of his own planes, flies to Vegas, plays blackjack, goes from 5 grand down to like one. He's about to lose it all and ran it all the way up to 25 grand. Did this at the Bellagio, by the way. It's great. It's right in his book. And went back and then literally was able to make payroll. The rest is history. Federal Express became what it is today. That's what it takes to be an entrepreneur. Sometimes I always tell people, listen, if you're not ready to just say fuck it and do the crazy shit, don't be an entrepreneur.
Yeah. Because you got to think how many people tried that and it didn't work, right? Like
Oh my God.
what's
I
the
know a lot of
chances
people.
what's the chances of that working, right? Like, let's just say,
The house
let's
always
say,
has the odds, trust me.
yeah, let's give it the benefit of the doubt and say it's 25%, because I'm pretty sure it's lower than that, right? That
Probably.
means for every Fred Smith, there's three other Fred Smiths that ended up broke, and who knows, maybe they rebounded and did something else.
Imagine if
Maybe,
he didn't win the money. Imagine he lost, had to fly back to Tennessee, and literally has to explain to his accountant or CFO the next morning, okay, remember the 5 grand we had in the bank? Here's what
right,
I did last night. Can you
right,
imagine like that conversation you would have had to say, I thought it was going to work. And the CFO would have been like, you're a fucking idiot. We're going out of business.
right. Yeah, I mean, FedEx may not exist.
That's he was literally at the brink.
Yeah,
Same thing with Elon Musk. There's a story about him. I don't know if it's in a book yet or not, but literally he was at the point where Tesla was about to not make payroll, and he flew to the Middle East and was able to raise significant amount of money in one night, and then flew back, and he was able to make payroll, and then the rest is history. He's now the most successful business entrepreneur of our lifetime.
yeah, yeah, definitely. And so I think for a lot of people, it's not start a business. Sometimes it's take the vacation you've always been dreaming of, right? They've wanted to go live in Italy for a month. They should go live in Italy for a month, or figure out. So whatever their dream is, I will tell you, somebody that, wrote a book. I didn't even want to write a book, but I got into it and I liked it. And then I started rewriting it. The next thing I knew, 2.5 years in, I had a book. And now I'm started on my second book,
What's the
right?
name of the book?
It's called Demystifying Money, A Journey to Change Your Financial Thinking.
Oh,
And
I like that.
it's about money. And the elevator pitch is this, right? Most
But when
people
you say
spend their,
money, are you talking about the US dollar or are you talking about Bitcoin, real
well,
hardcore money?
Bitcoin is really money, but that's pretty advanced for the average person, right? So I'm trying to meet people where they're at. The average person spends their whole life, right? Like, somebody works 40 hours a week. I don't know how many tens of thousands of hours that is working. Why do they work? Most of them for money, right? It impacts what house they live in, what neighborhood they live in, what car they drive, what trips they take, what food they eat, what schools their kids go to. People move across the country for money. Um, they take different jobs, they do things they don't want to do, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. People break the law for money, yet almost nobody understands money. And so what this book is I try to write it in a simple, instead of being a, a, a piece of nonfiction, it's a piece of fiction. And I really go through the history of money in the US, starting at Jamestown and through today, and teaching people about the history of money in the US. And then how does that apply to them and their family? And you're ahead of me, but yes, there's a significant part toward the end about Bitcoin that is actual real money. But I don't really start people there until we lay a foundation and they understand there's a lot of things that are broken in today's system with money and politics, and they're all tied together.
Well, never let idiot politicians be in charge of the checkbook because that's
Right.
one thing we're learning about money is we got off the gold standard. Whether all the gold that they say is there is actually at Fort Knox is one thing, but we got off the gold standard and now we have politicians making policy that affects the value of the money that we earn and have in our pockets. So the beauty of Bitcoin is you eliminate the politicians from Bitcoin, from money, and you're now able to store wealth. You're
Right.
able to use money as it was supposed to be used.
Yeah, I always tell people that if you talk to your great great grandma or grandpa in 1913 when the Fed was created, like now when you talk to them, they say, God, remember when this was a nickel? Remember when that was a dollar? And they talk about how cheap things used to be. If you would have talked to them in 1913, they would have talked about the old days, how expensive everything was. The natural state of the world through technology, innovation, entrepreneurship, competition, all of those things drive prices down. They drive quality and service up, they drive prices down. And from 1800 to 1813 to 1913, the cost of living in America got cut in half while wages increased significantly. And it was much easier for people to live. But from 1913 to today, the dollar, depending on who you listen to, has lost 90, or I think actually 99% of its purchasing power. And it's because of the Fed and what you said. The politicians they didn't have the ability just to print money at will and, and make the dollar worthless. And that was something that we were cursed with in 1913 when the Fed was created. Same year, by the way, the income tax was created. there was no income tax, no Federal Reserve money printing until 1913. And so,
Yeah, I kind of like where Trump is going with some of the things that he's doing about, he's collecting more money. He's got the External Revenue Service now collecting money. He's revitalizing a lot of thoughts around how we should run our country.
I think all those are great ideas. I'm hoping, selling this golden visa, all these things. And I just don't see how it works if they don't stop spending money. It doesn't
Well, I
matter if
mean,
you bring
this
in an
this
extra
recent
trillion if you
bill where
spend
they
an
added
extra two.
another 5 trillion to our debt, I keep thinking to myself, I don't think they want to stop spending money, and that's why I think we have to accept Bitcoin as our only savior right now when it comes to currency.
Yeah,
These politicians really just don't care.
well, I would push back a little bit, Chris. I think they care, but they do care about different things than what you and I care about. They care about staying in power and getting reelected. And the way they do that is they print more money, they put it into some social program that they think gets them votes, and they use that to buy votes, buy influence, it doesn't matter if it's individual people, if it's a union, if it's a corporation, they're all using that money printer to buy votes and stay in power. That's what I mean. I think it comes right back to human incentives.
I couldn't agree with you more.
Yeah.
Well, Randy, you're a poker player that likes a good game of Texas Hold'em or Omaha. You make good cabinets. You got good mindsets on money. You're teaching people stuff that's important. We should do this again sometime.
Yeah, I'd love to. I enjoyed it.
All right, boys and girls, check out the podcast. We'll talk soon.
All right. Thanks, Chris.
Hold on 1 second, buddy.